What's up, guys? Thanks for watching Engine25 reviews. My name is Brandon, and I've been assigned call sign Maestro by the higher ups around here. This is my buddy Nick up on the top left, call sign Kestrel, and this is my buddy Doug. We're all gaming. I'm sorry. Doug's call sign is Crawler. Of course, assigned by what'smycallsign.com. It's a promo website for Top Gun Maverick that I heard about on another podcast, and we absolutely had to do it. Yeah, so this is Engine25 reviews. As often as I can manage, we come on YouTube and we sit down with some buddies or some industry colleagues that I know and talk about movies. And this week we're talking about Top Gun Maverick. Of course, the sequel to the 1986 movie Top Gun, also both starring Tom Cruise. This movie is directed by Joseph Kosinski, probably best known previous to this for directing Tron Legacy, which is an interesting pull. Also Oblivion, which I feel like is another Tom Cruise movie, is it not? It is. It's the weird sci-fi one. That's all I'm going to say about that. Budget for Top Gun Maverick is $170 million, which is significantly higher than the budget for the original movie, which is somewhere in the ballpark of 15 to 20 million. Also, I read yesterday, we'll definitely talk about the aerial photography in this because it's 99% of it's real and it's absolutely stunning, but it also cost the production like $11,000 a minute or something, or like $11,000 an hour. So yeah, it's a thing. And Tom Cruise is absolutely really sitting in a jet that's really going 500 miles an hour, except they told him if you touch the controls, your movie's done. So if you put your hands on the stick, the whole show's over. So that's the funny thing about how the military works. Anyway, I've been talking for a bit, so how are you doing, Nick?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm here to talk about Top Gun. It can't get worse than that.
I am so excited to talk about Top Gun right now. Well, what about you, Doug? What's going on?
I'm definitely excited to talk about Maverick. I was stationed on board USS Abraham Lincoln for 4 years, so I haven't seen it for 25 years. So it was definitely good seeing the old boat again.
Is that she was used in this movie?
Yes.
The Abraham Lincoln? That's fantastic.
Yeah. Do you remember the opening montage, the little bobblehead at the end of the opening montage?
It's Abraham Lincoln. Yep.
It was Abraham Lincoln. Yes.
I noticed that. I noticed that in the movie. I was like,
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, some quick background. I want to talk about the original Top Gun for just a couple of minutes. This was a mainstay in my house because my older brother, well, actually, maybe because of Top Gun, he ended up in the Navy. He tried to get in the Naval Academy. That didn't work out, so he went to the Citadel with track for commission, which means the Navy subsidizes your education, and then when you get out of college, you're already an officer, with the goal of becoming a naval aviator. And eventually, he flew F-18 Super Hornets for a brief period of time. He was a little bit too tall, but really he was a little kind of stocky. So it's that was already working against him. It wasn't a dishonorable, nothing bad happened, but he washed out and he went into naval supply. But no, yeah, my brother was a winged naval Rio. It's the Rio's the guy in the back seat. He's Goose. Speaking of which, I can't believe I forgot to mention this, but I got a t-shirt for this. Talk to me, Goose. Yeah, so as you can imagine, Top Gun was definitely a mainstay when I was younger, around our house, and then I ended up watching it a lot, even without my older brother, because among other reasons, the aerial photography in Top Gun was absolutely groundbreaking for the time, and really remained unrivaled probably until this week. And it was definitely limited by the technology of the time.
Mhm.
you know, you kind of do have to sort of fill in with your imagination exactly what's happening, even though like they do absolutely the best they can. But it's still, you know, it's still pretty dope. You know, the Top Gun, it's a schmaltzy bro fest, but the aerial photography is still holds up.
Mhm.
Wow, what's your history with Top Gun, Doug? By the way,
Uh,
my older brother's name that I've mentioned several times now, his name is also Doug. I don't know if you knew that.
Awesome. No, yeah, I believe I watched it in the theater, and you know, I mean, it's classic '80s movies. You know, '80s had the best movies ever, and Top Gun was just one of them. And yeah, so I mean, the soundtrack is amazing.
The soundtrack is amazing. The soundtrack is, even among 80s movies, it's probably the best soundtrack. The soundtrack album for Top Gun is probably my
Yeah.
favorite soundtrack ever. Straight
Yeah,
up, the best soundtrack ever.
Because there really isn't a bad song on that soundtrack at all.
True facts. No. What's your favorite song from the original Top Gun?
I like Danger Zone myself, and actually, I was talking about it talking about Maverick with a guy at work today, and Danger Zone came on, so which is we thought was funny.
Perfect.
Yeah.
What about you, Nick? How do you what's your history with Top Gun? How you like that first movie, and what's your favorite song from the soundtrack?
Yeah, so I was a child of the '80s. My parents introduced me to Top Gun super early. I've always been a huge fan of fighter jets and just aviation in general. I really wanted to be a fighter pilot when so that
You are
got me.
definitely too tall.
I'm way too tall.
That funny thing, like there with Anthony Edwards and stuff, like you have to be really good for them to let a dude who's like 6'4" sit in the cockpit.
Mhm.
Like you got to be, and not saying it doesn't happen. You know, it doesn't. Being not exactly the right size doesn't knock you out immediately, but you got to be really good.
I'm also terrible at math. It was just a no-go. Just a no-go. I've growing up, one of my dad's friends was a mechanic for the Thunderbirds. And so I got to just travel regionally, just go to all these air shows. I've just been immersed in sort of like fighter pilot culture as much as any civilian can be since I was a kid, and it's been awesome. Ace Combat 5 is one of my favorite video games of all time. I love it so much. My favorite song on the Top Gun soundtrack is Mighty Wings.
Yes, that is also my pick.
So good.
It's so good, dude.
So good.
Cheap Trick.
I think it is underrated, and I think it can go toe to toe with Danger Zone any day.
I agree wholeheartedly. This is definitely my favorite song on the soundtrack. But there's really like Doug was saying, there's really not a bad one. And then I was that kid like down at the end of the lunch table in elementary school. It was always humming the theme to some movie, and it was either Jurassic Park or Indiana Jones or Top Gun. It was always one of those. All through the 90s, like to the point where I would be like annoying people because it was always just dancing around in my head. So we'll move on to Top Gun Maverick real fast, but like if you can sit down and look back at Top Gun objectively, you know, because I know it's obvious that we all love it, but like, you know, it's not known for being a great movie. It's known for being it's known for being a great 80s movie. It's known certainly for the aerial photography. But it's like, you know, it's like I said it before, it's like a schmaltzy bro fest is how I describe it. And it's like, it's a bunch of cocky dudes who learn that being cocky dudes will help them overcome. So it's, you know, the questionable messaging there, like it was a really expensive and apparently very effective military recruitment commercial. That's what the old Top Gun is. But it definitely has highlights. That's absolutely true. And you know, it's just, you know, it's a classic, and that's really all I have to say about it. Is it's a classic, and it'll always have a special place for me. But what do you think, Doug? Like, you were, especially for someone who was around when it came out. You know, I was born in '89, so it was a couple of years after.
Well, I mean, there had been dogfight movies before that, but they were all like World War II planes,
Right.
You know, and they're all prop planes, right? you never really had, jet fighter dogfighting before that movie. So it was groundbreaking in that aspect.
Absolutely. Totally. And I'm not trying to sound like that. I don't think that that's true, because it absolutely is.
I mean, you had the romance as well, but it was very much, a macho fest,
and teacher dates student, which is quite, they're both obviously adults, but the dynamic there is a little shaky.
Well, especially, being prior military, the regulations against that. So
yeah,
it's not really something that they look too highly upon.
Okay. What about you, Nick? Be honest. Say the things you like, the things you don't like about the original Top Gun.
The original is incredibly cheesy.
Yes.
Obviously the machismo is part of it, and that part is not what I would consider like the cheesiest parts, because like I don't know, man. Anytime you get a room of 12 dudes together, they're gonna be competitive doing whatever they're doing. They're gonna be competitive. You're gonna get sort of that attitude, that vibe.
I'd like to point out that the three of us met because we used to play a tabletop board game that's based around dogfighting. Specifically dogfighting in Star Wars, but
right.
Yeah. So the competitive nature is absolutely a real thing.
Exactly. You've both seen it, even when a bunch of old hairy nerds get around a 6 foot wide table. It's a part of it. It's a part of what competition is, and I think that's kind of one of the better parts of it, because it is cheesy. Like the some of the interactions between characters in the original movie, if you look at them objectively, it's like, well, that was an insane choice. Why did he click his teeth at Maverick? But I don't know. It's so quintessentially 80s, and the way that we make movies has changed since then, and I think that's part of it. It's a little bit dated as far as like how movie making goes.
Totally agree. That's not, I don't always think that a movie being dated is a big knock against it, because I like to think that films, as certainly as artistic entities, are often reflective of their time. So it's an 80s movie that feels like it's an 80s movie, and and if I'm talking about 80s movies, it's often one of the ones that I point people at, like they're certainly like E.T. or Indiana Jones would be up there, but Top Gun is certainly on the list. And it's a bro movie for bros. That's
and I mean, to add on to Nick's point as well,
please.
Is that when you get 12 guys that are all competitive, that if you think about each of them individually, they're all the best in their little pool, right? They're all this is the best pilot.
They came to sit down at Top Gun because they, wherever they are, they were already the best, or wherever they're from.
Right. So they already have that, that macho, that I'm the best. They already have that swagger. They already have that all coming in together. And and now they're all competing against each other to see who's the best of the best, right?
So, moving on to Top Gun Maverick, this movie has had kind of a storied history making it to the screen. They first, they talked about making a sequel to Top Gun in the 80s, and then they kind of dismissed it very quickly. But, it really started to become a thing in the late 2000s, and then there was a big push right around 2010, and that didn't work out. But that would this is eventually the movie that would become. And also, this was supposed to come out in 2020, and then it was originally delayed, not because of the pandemic. It was delayed pre-pandemic because, like, during the filming, they decided that they wanted to push aerial stunts and stuff further than they had planned, and that was going to take more time to film, basically. So it got delayed into 2021 pre-pandemic, and then it's been delayed twice because COVID is a thing. So it's even this version of it has been out for a while, and it was during that first delay has been in the works for a while, and it was during that first delay that Christopher McQuarrie got involved, who has been he's the writer-director on all the recent Mission Impossible movies with Tom Cruise. So he came in as a producer and did another pass on the script during that kind of delay, that initial delay period when they were kind of rethinking the filming aspect of it. But I am absolutely glad that they did. But this movie is an experience. And we went to IMAX. Is the biggest and loudest screen we could find, and I'm certainly glad that we did. They 100% surpassed anything as far as technical achievement in the first Top Gun, because there are there are a handful, probably count them on your two hands, of shots in this movie that involve jets that are CGI. The rest was 100% shot with real aircraft, actors sitting in the front seat, with an IMAX camera system that was designed for this movie, by the way, and was probably not cheap. And they had to do a lot of self-directing, and hoping that they were delivering on the take. I'm sure they did multiple takes or whatever. They're still making a movie, but the camera basically runs from takeoff until landing. And they they have a specific number of scenes that they're supposed to take off. They're supposed to execute on each hop. And that's what they get. And then there's a lot of, obviously air to air, a number of shots where the camera is affixed to one of the hero jets, and a lot of shots where it would be on a helicopter as jets flew by. Generally, likely a lot farther away than they make it look. But also an important thing that I think when you're talking about when you're watching actual aircraft perform actual aerial maneuvers, like everything is bigger than it looks. Everything, like, you ever been to it? I'm sure both of you have. You've been next to a jet up close. Everything's bigger than you think, even when you're watching it on the big screen. Like that.
Yeah.
An F-18 Super Hornet is 63 feet long. That is 1.5 semi trucks. And it's easy to say that, but you don't really get a good picture of the things it's actually doing until you can stand next to the thing. And then you say, okay, this is going 600 miles an hour and is doing flips and is, and that's maybe I'm just a nerd, but that seems very cool to me. And it just makes it all the more impressive that they were able to capture the things that they were. And there are rules too, like in the movie, over the course of the movie, they talk about, that aircraft is designed to work a certain way, and different versions of fighter jets are designed to perform specific maneuvers. Some can do certain things, some others cannot. And there are rules for safety. There are rules for engagement. There are also, the military puts a lot of rules on what they're actually allowed to show the planes doing. Which is an interesting thing, like the Super Hornets, Tomcats, they can all do, they're able to perform maneuvers that aren't allowed to be filmed in a movie. And that is just, it's the nature of the beast and working with the military. But it's, man, dude, the aerial footage in this film completely blew me away. And it's edited in a way that is like a head and shoulders above the original Top Gun. I said earlier, you kind of have to use your imagination and fill in some gaps with the dogfights in the original Top Gun. This movie, I think, alleviates a lot of that. The geography makes sense. You have it very clearly shows you this is where the aircraft are. This is where they're trying to go. And honestly, the movie spends a lot of time describing the geography with this canyon run they kind of have to do. But it's
right.
And I expected this to be the case, but absolutely the thing that Top Gun Maverick does best is doing cool shit with airplanes. And it's it's Top Gun Maverick has, compared to every other movie I've ever seen, blown away the experience of aerial the experience of aerial dogfighting in a movie. And they put the camera in the cockpit right in that actor's face, and they show you things that we've never seen in a movie before, and they're pilots that are actually doing them. Not actors, obviously, aren't flying the planes, but the aircraft are actually doing these amazing things. And it is presented in such a way that you can, like, you feel it. There are multiple times in this movie where, like, the whole theater, like every person in that theater is just like held their breath.
Well, it's funny that you say that. Do you remember a movie about 20 years ago called U-571? It was like a submarine movie.
Yes, Matthew McConaughey's in it, like a super young Matthew McConaughey. Yeah.
Yes, it's a movie about a submarine, and there was a scene in there where it's like filling up with water, and it's submerging essentially. Well, I caught myself holding my breath during that scene in U-571. I'm in the theater. I'm like, okay, I don't need to hold my breath, but I am because I'm so into the movie. Maverick was like that because it's such a thrill ride, adrenaline rush that when I left the theater after Maverick, I was all pitted out, because there was just so much adrenaline going through me. And I was just like, oh, that stench is me. Okay. Yeah, sorry.
I don't know if you could be as sweaty as Miles Teller is in this movie, but you might have given him a run for his money.
Right.
What about you, Nick? Talk to me about Top Gun Maverick. General thoughts at first, so we'll go into spoilers in a couple of minutes.
So I've seen it twice now.
Nice.
I saw it Tuesday in IMAX premiere, and then I saw it last night with my folks. And you briefly touched on it. There is a gravity to the way they're performing it that just especially these days where we're leaning a lot on CG and not doing as many practical effects. There is a gravity. You can tell that like these people are here and they're doing the thing.
Yeah. And I don't know that there has ever been a movie that's really like captured the feeling of what doing these aerial maneuvers actually does to the body. It is there are less than 1% of the humans that are alive would be able to do just sit in the plane and do some of this stuff without just passing out. It is and they're obviously they're in the military. They're all in great shape, but it's a visceral feeling of doing things in a fighter jet that is effective in a way that I've never seen before.
And
I found myself, especially during the canyon run, is you're in your seat, right? You're watching, you just kind of go.
Yeah, you find yourself leaning with them. Yes.
And yeah, I love that Tom Cruise grunted each time that he was shifting because you're gonna feel that weight every time. My
brother's saying it hurts. The elephant on your chest thing that it sounds like a joke in the movie. That's that's a real thing. And the closest that civilians will ever get to it, it's probably a theme park ride. It's.
It is very specifically the rock and roller coaster in Disneyland or Disney World, which launches the coaster via a carrier catapult.
And the Mission Space ride is pretty, if you do the intense version, you hold up your arms and you're fighting the shake. It's G-force. It's it's a thing that you can't really describe until you've experienced it. And this is coming from someone who hasn't really. I don't like roller coasters. I've been on Mission Space twice. I wouldn't make it in as a fighter pilot, but my brother, he owns a motorcycle, so you can do a little bit of this, but it's the certainly one place where I think the movie absolutely succeeds with flying colors is putting you in the cockpit and helping you feel the way that the pilots are as best as the medium can possibly do that. Right. And it's kind of, it's almost like a little surprising that they show a pilot G-lock in this movie. It's just and what that means is the G-force causes you to pass out because all the blood essentially runs out of your head and your chest weighs so much that you can't breathe and you go unconscious, and the pilot survives in the movie. Spoiler alert. I'll throw up the spoiler in a minute, but that is a very real thing that happens. And once it does, there's nothing that can be done unless the pilot wakes up and recovers. You know,
Right.
so you could G-lock for a fraction of a second, or you could G-lock for upwards of a minute. You know, and it depends on the maneuver you were doing, and your flight suit has something to do with that. You know, they're designed to keep blood where it matters, but it's it's a real thing. And I was worried about payback.
It was important when they shot that, when they did, because then that was during the training.
Yes.
Spoiler alert. So you as the viewer can say, okay, that can happen in the mission.
Yeah. And if okay, I'm gonna go to spoilers.
Yeah, let's do spoilers.
Yeah. It can happen in the mission, and if it did, like the last third or the whole movie, they're training to execute this precision strike on a nuclear weapon factory, essentially, and the end of that mission involves a high G climb out of a canyon, and the moment that they clear the mountaintop, they are under fire by surface to air missiles. Right. So what essentially, if you pass out, the plane keeps going, except you are now you're tracked by surface to air fire. So if you're unconscious for 10 seconds, then you don't wake up again. You're
right.
It's and it's it's shown. I can't say anything about how effective so some of the aerial stuff in this movie. Like it blew me away. What about how did we like the young the new pilots? Basically Maverick is in the movie he's an old guy who's either has not been promoted or who's been resisting promotion so that he can stay in the pilot seat for as long as he can. And he pulls a stunt at the beginning of the movie in order to keep his flight support crew doing what they want to do instead of moving to UAVs. And then because of this, essentially, he almost gets kicked out of the Navy, which is that's apparently a regular thing for Maverick. And then he gets transferred over to Top Gun because he's supposed to train these young pilots to execute this suicide mission. Mm-hmm. And oh man, I forgot where I was going. But that's the seed for the movie. That's the kind of the setup for the plot.
The introduction of the pilots is I like the way
the young pilots. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Again, because it was reminiscent of the first Top Gun. It was a bar scene. That's where they introduced all of the pilots. And I like that the pilots all knew each other, or at least knew of each other. Right. Because that would be, they've all been through Top Gun. So that would be realistic that they would know each other and know of each other. Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
I was just the bar scene. The very first time I watched it was a little clunky for me, and that's just because it's where we meet everyone. It's the most exposition heavy part of the movie.
It's a lot of exposition in a short amount of time.
Right, a very short amount of time, and also because we're trying to beat into the audience's brain, this is this person, this is this person. Everyone is using their call signs every single time they need to use a proper noun. It's and the first time I watched it was a little clunky. When I watched it again, it was like, oh, this is fine. It's not a big deal. But I love the way that at the end of the bar scene they throw Tom Cruise out, and then you get Top Gun Day One, and it's a reversal of when he meets when it's revealed that Charlie is the instructor. It's a reversal.
You get Hangman in the front row, like, oh shit, I just threw this guy out on the sidewalk.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a really good, a tiny little callback. I think that I immediately I was like, oh, I get it. He's Charlie. It makes sense now.
Well, and then the big, again, huge spoiler here, Rooster. Is huge reminiscent, like heartstrings pulling of the first movie.
Yeah, and he looks exactly like Goose. He
does.
Miles Teller plays Rooster Bradshaw. Bradley, Who names if your
Bradley
last
Bradshaw.
name's Bradshaw? Who names your kid Bradley? Anyway, yeah. So his call sign's Rooster, and he's Goose's son, and he's tall and lanky and has a mustache just like Goose.
And can play the piano
Just
and
like
the
Goose.
song that he plays that will tug at your heartstrings.
I do think the second time I watched it, Maverick's tiny little PTSD spiral and the bar scene was really good. I could have done without the flashbacks.
Right.
That seemed like a little much, but
Because you'd seen the movie, and maybe people who hadn't seen the movie,
That's why it's there. You're like you the three of us understand, but these days you're making the movie for everybody. Even a lot of people that might think Top Gun, that's that old 80s thing, that's silly, but their buddies want to go see a movie, so then they tag along. So you fill it in there because just so you know, oh, so this guy in the picture, this guy died, and Maverick thinks it's his fault, even though everyone since has told him it's not his fault. So yes, and that kind of that forms the emotional backbone of the movie,
Right.
because Maverick apparently tried to prevent Miles Teller from getting he pulled his papers and didn't, so he had a delay getting in the Naval Academy, which pushed back his military career because he was trying to protect him from what happened to his dad, and that just kind of creates ultimately a lot of bad blood. And I think Tom Cruise, he's known for being a movie star, but he pulls out the chops in this movie in a way I did not expect.
Absolutely. I think the single best non-flight scene in the movie is actually him and Val Kilmer when in Val's brief scene, because it's so hard to act opposite a mostly emotionless, mute person.
Absolutely.
You have to supply everything yourself, and he brings everything that we need to that scene. And it's when I watched it the second time, I was like, "Oh, this is the best. This is the best non-flight scene in the movie."
Absolutely.
I agree with that completely. And Val Kilmer, they got him in the movie. Apparently, he was more than happy to do it. And Tom Cruise kind of pushed for it to happen. Unfortunately, Val Kilmer has in the last couple of years, he had throat cancer and had to have a full tracheotomy. So they kind of play that up in the movie. To a degree, they don't define it, but Iceman's very sick, but they still, he still has a relationship with Maverick. They text and it zooms in on Maverick's phone, and he's just in there as ice. And I was like, oh man,
This movie is way funnier than the original. The original is funny, but it's mostly from your character interactions where they're all just kind of being assholes to one another.
Right.
This movie has comedic chops.
Mm-hmm.
In a way I did not expect at all.
I agree. And you mentioned this scene with Val Kilmer, where he primarily talks through a computer screen because it's difficult for him to speak. But no, yeah, it really brings out a lot of subtlety and it's like they're best friends, and there's a lot of respect there, and there's a lot of I don't even know how to describe it. It comes across really, really warm, and it could have been handled kind of poorly, but they're really respectful of Val Kilmer in the scene. And it's ultimately that it's Maverick has to hear that someone else thinks he can do it. And it sounds weird. You're breaking the illusion that they're all just tough guys. Because what happens if Maverick sends Rooster on this suicide mission and Rooster doesn't come back from it? And then Val Kilmer basically just has to be like, it's the same risk you took, but you can teach them, you've got it in you to make it so they come home.
Right.
And Maverick didn't really believe that was the case until after this scene. So it's a big turning point for Maverick in this movie. And then unfortunately we lose Iceman to his sickness in a scene shortly after that. But it really allows Maverick to let go of what happened to Goose, and really prove to himself and prove to the pilots that this thing that we're trying to do is possible. And if we so it leans into that 80s schmaltziness, but like in a really satisfying way.
But there's like, if you think about Maverick for his entire career, he hasn't really had anybody that has believed in him. He lost Goose because Goose, trusted him with his life. He lost Goose, and everybody respected him, but nobody really believed in him. And especially in Maverick, Iceman, you kind of get that backstory of Iceman always believing in him, always not letting him, get out or stop piloting. So yeah, and and as soon as Iceman is gone, John Hamm, his character,
he tries to pull the plug.
Automatically it's like, you're done. So
the Ice was here like protecting you and keeping you in the service, and then once he no longer has Iceman to fall back on, these other guys who are John Hamm and he plays Cyclone, and this other guy Warlock, who are both admirals. Doug, is that fair to think that it would be two admirals in charge of like of a Top Gun school? Like, because that seems like it would be below them to me, but I don't, maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, all of the pilots were all lieutenants, which is
my brother was a lieutenant.
03. Yeah, so that's 03 level. Admirals is like 07 level, I think. The officer 7 level. So he being a captain, I think he was 06. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have, it's either gonna be a captain or an admiral.
Okay.
John Hamm was a 3-star admiral, so it's not likely to have him a 3-star.
I think like because there are so few of them by that point that they would have something better to like they say Iceman is a 2-star admiral and he's in charge of the Pacific Fleet.
Right.
That's dozens of ships that Iceman kind of manages.
I actually looked this up. I looked this up
in the
middle of this week. The United States Navy has about 1 admiral per every 2 ships.
Okay.
Just the amount of naval boats we have, and the amount of admirals that are active in the United States Navy, it's about 2 to 1. So in theory, we have so many admirals.
Okay, that makes sense then. I was just curious, and I'm not super familiar with rankings and things. I just seem like it's an admiral is vaguely equivalent to like a general in the Army. And again, I just feel like that they would have bigger fish to fry, so to speak, but maybe that's not the case.
Many of them do, but maybe most of those posts had already been filled. Right.
And these guys are also both pilots, and that would not be true of every admiral in the Navy. So that's probably relevant here.
And maybe that's part of it too, is that, like John Hamm's character Cyclone, maybe he, was a Top Gun pilot. And so he is where Maverick should be. You know what I mean? So he kind of, he kind of resents Maverick for not getting to that point and for constantly being a troublemaker. And, that's why he's still a captain.
I mean, okay. That's making sense. Did we like John Hamm in this movie? Because I'm always down for more John Hamm, and he's definitely the like kind of the stuffy old military guy, like the principal from Back to the Future in the first movie. But I can't not enjoy John Hamm, really.
I liked John Hamm. I think it was a bit of a missed opportunity to not have Cyclone and Warlock also sortie at some point, because like when in the original, when they're up in the air,
holy shit, it's Viper.
Holy shit, it's Viper.
Right.
It's a big deal. And so I do think it's a missed opportunity to not have them in the air at least once. But
I'll give you that.
Yeah, I do think he played a great hard ass. And I also like the actor who plays Warlock a lot. So like I was just happy anytime they were both on screen.
Who is that actor that played Warlock? I did like that we got Ed Harris.
I'm pretty sure it's
Mhm.
Bill Purnell.
That sounds familiar. I'm looking. Lewis Pullman is Bill Pullman's son, the dude who played
That was
Bob.
Bob. That was
Yeah.
Bob.
Right.
As soon as the credits popped up and it was like Lewis Pullman, and I was like, oh, that's Bill Pullman's kid.
Right.
Yeah, Charles Parnell plays Warlock.
Charles Parnell, not Bill Parnell. I've enjoyed him in several things that he's done. So I do think it's a bit of a missed opportunity to not have them jump in and maybe do some kind of aggressor squadron thing with Maverick against the Top Gun kids.
Right.
That would have been cool. But ultimately, that wasn't what the mission was about. So I get why it wasn't included.
The goal of the mission was to avoid encountering enemy aircraft. So, that secondary goal, other than, eliminating this facility while also avoiding enemy fire and bugging out before you encounter enemy jets. I mentioned Ed Harris. Anytime Ed Harris is in anything, I appreciate it. And he's another admiral. Hammer is his call sign. And then I really liked Maverick's buddy Hondo. The dude who was he's in the beginning when he's testing the hypersonic stealth aircraft, and then he follows him over to Top Gun, and then is on the ship when they go on the suicide mission. I really like that guy. Any other highlights in the cast, do you think?
The guy who plays Hangman is incredible. He understood the assignment. He was like, "Oh, I'm going to be."
He's the new Iceman. Glenn
I'm
Powell.
going to be the antagonist, and he understood the look. He understood exactly the attitude he needed to have. He was perfect.
Absolutely.
Looking back through the cast list, I like Phoenix. I like Payback. They really got a strong strong crop of people to play the young pilots, and who you believe that they would, like the Tom Cruise makes this whole bit about making them a team, and you believe that they would be competitive but also chummy. They have a lot of respect for each other, and they playfully rib, but they're going into a life or death situation, and I think probably more than the original movie, you feel like they're ready to do that with each other, and to they're going to look out for each other, and we all know what we're up against, and we're all going to get each other through it in a way that, and it's, I don't even know that was the case in the old movie until right at the end. It's like, all right, we did it. Now we're best friends.
Right.
Yeah, in the original, they are very cutthroat until they cannot be.
Right.
Right. Well, that's something too that civilians don't understand, is that you're putting your life in someone else's hands on a daily basis. You are absolutely trusting someone else with your life. And they captured that with the crew, essentially, the pilots, saying, yeah, we're, it's entirely possible that I don't come back, but I'm going to make sure that you do, kind of thing, so it's,
you got to stay with your wingman.
Yeah. You really don't get that level of trust.
And there's a really great moment where they're in the classroom after Maverick has just wiped the floor with the young folks repeatedly. They're sitting in the classroom, going over mission reports. It's so if basically what happens here is you crashed, you don't explain what happened to me. Can you explain it to his wife?
Exactly.
Yeah. He's in your back seat, and you are responsible for landing the plane at the end of the mission. Or you are responsible for staying with your wingman, and if anything happens to your wingman, it's just as much on you as it is on him.
Right.
Then there's go ahead.
That seems really good because it does establish Maverick's going to be a troublemaker, but it establishes that he does absolutely care about the mission and care about getting his people home.
He takes it seriously, like, and their lives are at stake, and maybe some of these other pilots have, they're the best of the best, but maybe they haven't really been in that kind of situation before. Very few of them have even been head to head against enemy aircraft, and they mentioned that only Hammer he's the only one in active duty that has ever shot down an enemy plane, right? So it's first of all, none of them have encountered the physical requirements of this mission, and very few of them have ever even encountered enemy aircraft,
right?
In at least in any threatening way. So it's, it takes a bit for them to get it through their heads that it's real, and maybe that's dramatized for the movie. Like they're not, these aren't recruits. They're already the best pilots in the Navy. So they've been through all these classes before, and in fact, like the first thing Maverick does when he walks in and says, "Here's the manual for your airplane," and he throws it in the trash. Like they all know the book back to front. They're not the new guys. And they're career military people who know what the risks are, but it's hard to tell if any of them really understand that to a visceral level, like at the degree that they really understand. Maybe I'm not articulating, but they know, but do they really know?
Well, they know that it's entirely possible that they don't come back.
Right.
And, John Hamm, Cyclone, he's, his initial attitude is they're not coming back. And Maverick is the one that changed his attitude.
We complete the mission and we bring them home. The mission isn't complete if
exactly.
Not all the pilots make it back to the deck.
Exactly. And so that was a big part of the training is, why did you die? So they need to understand that,
and that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie is the thing where he's like, you don't have to explain this to me. Can you explain it to his family? Why your Rio isn't going to go home and see his wife? Like, oh, hey, buddy, my dog came to say hi.
But yeah, because you really don't have that. Like, you had that with Meg Ryan and Goose in the first movie. You really don't have that in this movie. To a extremely lesser extent, Jennifer Connelly in this, because now Maverick has a reason to come back, but you really don't have that in this movie. As far as having a reason to come back, aside from being alive.
Well, yeah, like his Maverick's reasons to come home are Jennifer Connelly and Rooster. By the end of the movie, he's repaired his relationship with Rooster, largely because of this harrowing, life-threatening situation that they go through. But like he didn't have a relationship with Rooster until all this happened, so he's right. Maverick's certainly not a wash up, but he's kind of an icon of a bygone era, and he doesn't really have much to live for other than keeping, he wants to stay in the seat. He wants to keep his technicians employed, and that was kind of his, what surprised me, like his whole mission at the beginning of the movie. He says it with a cocky Maverick kind of swagger, but like we're going to hit Mach 10 so that all of us get to stay here.
Right.
So they jump the gun, and fucking Ed Harris comes in. It's just like, I'm early. So are you. Can you explain that? Like, but he does it from a kind of selfless place, which was kind of surprising for me, especially for being the opening scene. Like we get the montage of all the jets on the deck, and then the first thing we go to is Maverick has this big mission today, where he's supposed to prove that this test aircraft can do Mach 9, and it's like, well, actually, they don't care if we can't hit Mach 10, and it's impossible, so we're not going to do it. And Maverick says, no, we're going to do it. So he's kind of, somewhere between that cocky guy he was in the 80s, and then the man he is at the end of the movie, obviously, but he doesn't do it for himself, like he was fully prepared to sacrifice himself to make sure that Rooster came back alive. Absolutely. And in fact, he kind of does so. He gets in the way. There's a moment where they're pursued by enemy aircraft at the end of the movie. And Rooster is out of flares, which is a countermeasure that you spray behind your plane because it confuses heat-seeking weapons. So Rooster has a missile on his tail, and then Maverick gets in the way, dumps his own flares, and basically gets hit by the missile. So that, yeah, like Maverick was prepared and like almost deliberately took hostile fire to protect Rooster.
Absolutely.
I thought they were going to kill Maverick. I
was afraid of that before I walked in. I'm like, are we gonna see Maverick die here?
I thought maybe that was going to be the way to go because it would mirror obviously the Goose
Star Wars,
where like he got it's inverted. But he obviously that's I figured that was going to be like the character growth. As we've seen Maverick grow, he's not just hot shot, hot dog, and showboat. He put himself on the line to save someone else. And I thought there was an audible gasp when he gets hit in my theater. It was like, and like I was like, there's no way that they just killed Maverick. But like,
that was one of the moments where it was like, people held their breath for a second, and it was almost silent in there. Like, there's a moment in the movie, Dagger 1 is down, and it's, John Hamm says, no, you can't go back for them. They gotta come home.
Right. And then like they linger on everyone not going to get him for such a long time.
Yes.
That you're like, holy crap, they just killed Maverick.
Yeah, and then and they did it like really fast. Like, it's that's how fast things can change in a real firefight. But it's, like everything seems okay, and then they fly past another SAM site, and then seconds later, Maverick's plane is in the ground. Like it's, and it's it unfolds that quick. And then they spend minutes. Like just telling all their pilots, no, he's down. We can't go back for him, or we're going to lose another plane. So, right. And then, and then there was you said you heard an audible gasp. Like I heard or maybe it was just me. Maybe I could just feel it, but it was like it fades it, like it blacks out for a few seconds, and then it fades into Maverick, and then there was like a relaxing breath that and it might have just been me, but like it was. I didn't expect to be so taken by it. If something happened to Maverick, I was, I watch movies like kind of for a living almost. So it's like, okay, so they're doing this. This is usually my reaction if something unexpected happens. But no, like this, it's done so effectively, like almost to my surprise, that it was just like,
right,
okay, we're okay. What happens next?
Yeah, you don't see him eject on purpose.
Yeah, they take a big chunk out of his airplane and it spins around out of view, right. But you don't see a parachute.
Right, you see everyone else's reaction to it.
Right.
But you don't actually see him, and which is purposeful.
Absolutely.
So they give you that, that, oh no, what's going to happen. But even that, that's one of my main knocks against Maverick is its predictability. You're talking about the first scene with him and going to Mach 10, and they're like, he's going to go beyond Mach 10.
We're aiming for Mach 10, not 10.2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So as soon as he's told not to do something, guess what? It's Pete Maverick Mitchell. That's what he's going to do. So yeah, it was incredibly predictable. But it was kind of satisfying in a way that, okay, I thought this was going to happen.
That's why I'm okay with it being predictable.
Yeah, because it's satisfying that, okay, I know Hangman's going to be coming to rescue him at some point, and there he comes, right? So it's like, it's coming.
Well, and Maverick getting shot down leads to Rooster, right. Of course,
right,
kind of down.
Rooster coming back, and he blows up the gunship.
Yeah, blows up the gunship, and that leads to my literal favorite line in the movie: is Tom Cruise is the dead sprint. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm good. He pushes him down.
Yeah,
and they have that little fight in the woods, and he's just like, "What were you thinking?" And he's like, "You told me not to think." And it's just, and then they both go, "Yep, okay, yes, you're right." It's real like shithead nephew energy, and it was like perfect.
I agree wholeheartedly. Like I had such
Yeah.
that got a laugh out of me when he just like pushes his ass down in the snow.
Yeah.
This is like what the hell were you thinking? Like I did this so that you went home.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it just I didn't expect after Maverick had shot down. I had no idea what to expect, and then it just kind of kept going exactly where I wanted it to be.
Right.
Like, oh, of course he's gonna steal an F-14.
Of course he is. Of course, it already works. You know, like they. I guess it was the fuel pump they were probably firing up because it can't sit on the tarmac with fuel in it, right?
Right. Yeah, they were. So yeah, essentially, Rooster was firing up the jet to get it to work. Yeah, they were fueling it. He pulled the pins on the ordnance.
Right.
All the things that the Skittles do, which we'll talk about in a minute, to get the plane ready to, go.
Right.
And be combat ready. And I was thinking, how is he going to get into the plane himself when he's doing all that stuff on the ground? He's jumped on the wing and just hopped.
Yeah,
he's
like
whatever.
There was like a ladder or a box or something. He just jumped on a box and hopped the wing. Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're telling me about the Skittles. Tell me about your time on deck, Doug.
Yeah, one of the things that a lot of civilians don't understand when they see an aircraft carrier movie is they see all these people with different colored shirts, and they don't understand that all those different shirts have different jobs.
That makes sense.
The purple ones are the fuel, the red ones are ordnance, and they have. Let me put it this way: they have extra jobs beyond their main job. It's not just one thing and they're done.
Right.
Or the ordnance, the AOs, aviation ordnancemen, wear red jerseys, and they also do like damage control, fire control, that kind of thing. But aviation, the ordnance is their main thing. Anyway, green are like the plane maintenance. Yellow are the steam catapult operators. Well, to us, like the rest of the people, they just look like Skittles. They're just all wearing these different colored red, yellow, green jerseys. We just call them Skittles. But like the blue were like the elevator operators. The brown were the plane captains.
Okay.
So the brown were in charge of the planes, like everything with the plane. But the green were kind of the maintenance. And there's one scene in the movie that a lot of people won't appreciate as much as I did. Is when they launched all 4 fighters, bam, 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 like that. You don't understand what it takes to launch one fighter.
Mm-hmm.
I
had that thought. And is it reasonable for them to launch 4 jets in like under 60 seconds? Because I didn't ask my brother.
They can do it. It takes a lot of steam pressure because each one of those catapults are steam operated.
It's pneumatic, so it has to refill once it's relieved, right?
Right. So they can't just launch another one from that same catapult right away. But they would have to, charge up all 4 catapults with all of the steam that they needed all at the same time. You know what I'm saying? And one thing you got to understand is that there's a lot of people that are involved with launching one plane.
Right.
Well, when catapult 1 goes off, the people that were, involved with that got to be out of the way when catapult 2 goes off. You know what I'm saying? Like they can't be in the way. So all the catapults have to be clear for them to launch. And so there's dozens of people for each catapult, and to launch them, bam, 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 bam. That's an amazing amount of coordination. And I mean, it can happen, and kudos to the air, the air wings that can do that. But it's an amazing amount of coordination and, just everything that goes into launching one. You launch 4 of them within 10 seconds or whatever they did. I appreciated that, being on the boat.
I wish maybe we could see more of that kind of thing in movies like this. Like it's always cool to see the pilots, they do cool shit with their airplanes, and we get to see the planes doing stuff.
Right.
But there are the pilot is just he's the guy with his name on the side, but he's not the one that gets that plane ready for take. Like, well, they have a checklist,
Right.
you know what I mean? But there are
Right.
dozens of people that are in charge of the aircraft before the pilot climbs the ladder, and we don't
Absolutely.
usually get that in this kind of movie.
He's
Right.
the pilot's your lead singer, and then every band needs a bassist, and the bassist is often underappreciated. And yeah, I think those guys are the bassists.
And the roadies. I mean, those are the roadies that make, the band happen.
Exactly.
All the Skittles are the ones that make those planes, and you think about what they showed. They showed Rooster doing all of those things himself. Well, on the carrier, there's 10 different people that, you pull this pin, on this side of the plane, and, there's places that you can and can't be when jets are running, because that was one of the things that we had happen actually is we had a jet turn and its exhaust blew someone right off the deck. And
That's terrifying. It's a long way down off an aircraft carrier.
It really is.
It's like a long way to the water.
It's like 90
Wow.
feet. Yeah, it's a long way. But one thing that most people don't know is that the helicopters are always the first and the last on the deck and off the deck. So they go out first. And so if there is a man overboard, the rescue choppers are right there, like right away. And so they're either circling or they're hovering, depending on whatever they're doing that day. But yeah, the rescue choppers are always out there first, and they're always the last ones in, just for mishaps, anything like that.
That's just safety precautions and stuff. And that's some of that procedural stuff. Like when you're in a movie that's, number one, already 2 hours long, but like it's about these the fighter pilot characters, and some of this other stuff is important, but it as interesting as it is, might not make for an interesting movie.
Right.
Compared to the other stuff that's going on. But like, I do wish that we would, in some of these military movies, spend a little bit more time with the folks that do the work, so to speak. Is there anything that stuck out to you, Doug, that like didn't seem quite right as far as like military execution or procedural or any of that kind of stuff?
Not really.
Or it's just stuff that, as far as just didn't seem possible about the way jets operate or whatever?
So Maverick stealing a plane seemed normal.
No, you talk to the controller, it's like, well, I don't have an event schedule. And I mean, yeah, him stealing that F-18, they're gonna, there's gonna be a group of people that take care of that aircraft. They're gonna be like, yeah, we don't have you scheduled today, so they might stop him, but
right.
They also know that it's Pete Maverick or Pete Mitchell, so he's a captain, so he can just be like, I'm taking this plane out. Well, we got to clear that with the admiral, that kind of thing. So that probably would have happened. So that's probably a movie moment. But I'm thinking about the carrier and most of that stuff. Nah, I mean, just like the admirals would be in the situation room kind of
right.
thing. They'd be in the radar room, and so they would all know what's going on. And like having the EWAC up, having the radar saying what's going on. Yeah, because those always launched early too, because they would always put the EWACs in the air so that you could have the radar.
And that launches off the carrier, or that would come from an airfield on land? Okay.
They launch off the carriers.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I asked because the original Top Gun is kind of infamous for a number of things that maybe don't really work the way they work in the movie. Particularly like in reference to Goose's death, like there are a number of physical phenomenon that like in a very rapid string that any one of which is a physical impossibility that lead to Goose's ejection accident. And there are also you could point out if any one of these things actually happened, like, okay, your jet's in a flat spin, there are steps that you take, like, first of all, situational awareness, which they didn't seem to have. And there are specific steps that you take procedurally to survive. At that point in an F-14, in a flat spin, there's very little you can do anyway. It's because of the it has, I think, I just read this yesterday. It has spoilers, but it doesn't have ailerons or whatever. So like Maverick grabbing the stick, there's nothing that control stick can do to get you out of a flat spin. Like my brother said, maybe you could just power out of it. That relies on you still having the engines. Right. And if you have the engines, the likelihood of you getting into that kind of spin, like malfunction, is like almost nil anyway. So like little things like that. But there's also just military procedure and stuff is often ignored in movies. So I was just curious if there's anything that seemed even as a deck officer, like you, Doug, like if there's anything that seemed weird or kind of out of place.
Not with the carrier, but I mean, even when Maverick did steal the F-18, John Hamm right away was like, "I've got everything I need on you to court-martial you."
Yeah, and, that's true. Yeah,
he's dead right.
If it wasn't for our old buddy Iceman, like you'd be in jail right now. So it's
right.
We've been going for about an hour. Any closing thoughts? Things we haven't talked about? I know. Did we talk about Jennifer Connelly? I know, Doug, you were saying that her whole thing didn't really work for you as much.
No, I honestly thought that Jennifer Connelly was better in the movie than Kelly McGillis was in the first one.
Okay.
Because I think Jennifer Connelly, her character understood Maverick better and was able to push the right buttons and push him into, when he was self-doubting, she was able to push him into doing the things that he needed to do. So she understood him. Right. Did it need to be a love interest? Not necessarily, but I mean, it's a movie. Oh, well. But I thought that she really understood him and was able to push him and carry. And she was more vital to the storyline than Kelly McGillis was in the first one. Okay. And she's, for being 51 years old, she's also amazingly smoking hot. So, there's that.
True facts. Yeah, I would say I liked her in the movie, and I agree with a lot of the points you make. I didn't get them together. That didn't really work for me. Like, she could have been in the movie and fulfilled a lot of the same roles, even if she was just an old friend, or maybe maybe she was an old flame, but they don't rekindle the romance, or just or maybe he tries it like Maverick does. She brushes it off or something. But I'm not a writer, but I love both of them in the movie, but I don't necessarily think that the romance subplot really worked a whole lot.
I think the only reason the romance subplot was there was to give Maverick a reason to come home. He was fully prepared to sacrifice himself to make sure Rooster came home. Right. And she's there to make sure, okay, now I have a reason to come home because, I will have someone that will miss me, because he really doesn't have that.
What about you, Nick? Any closing thoughts? Anything you didn't like, or you liked or didn't like about the movie we haven't talked about?
There was one real nitpicky thing was so they launched Dagger Group, right? Right. And they're all zoom into the mission, and then this support ship that we've never heard of until just now launches 50 Tomahawk cruise missiles, and they take out this airstrip. And I just think maybe we could have spared 10 of those for the SAM sites.
That's a fair point.
Well,
maybe we could have spared 10 of those for the.
Would that have messed with the terrain though that they were flying around? Because if those hit the terrain, now there's shrapnel, there's stuff in the air.
They spend the entire movie flying through this simulation of the canyon, and that's a fair point. If you drop a couple of missiles and you move an entire mountain in your way, that becomes a problem.
Sure, that's but also it becomes a much smaller problem to stick to that terrain, because now we can go higher because we don't have to worry about all these SAM sites.
Right.
That's the one nitpicky thing is that they introduced that out of nowhere, and it solves it.
They did spend a solid hour of this movie talking about the plan, and various versions of the plan, and literally not until they're already on the ship about to launch the planes do they mention that these Tomahawk missiles are part of the plan. So that's a fair point.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing I do want to mention is I don't think the soundtrack for this movie holds up. Tony Scott's vision for the original Top Gun was a rock and roll show in the sky, and I don't think that this matches up to that quite a bit. There's just not enough rock and roll.
I don't disagree. I will say, there are not enough 80s power ballads for sure. That Gaga song is dope though.
It's dope. It comes into the movie too late. They're very specifically when Maverick has his wings taken away, he goes to see Jennifer Connelly, and very notably, there's no music, there's no score, there's nothing in that scene. And there would have been something. Harold Faltermeyer would have had something in the score for the original. You would have had your somber theme at that moment, because that's Maverick's low point. He doesn't have wings anymore. That is the low point of the movie.
Right.
And I think I expected a little bit better out of Hans Zimmer. There's also not a lot of score in the attack run itself.
That's true.
The choice to let your engine roar.
Yeah, they focus on the jets and the wind noise quite a bit during that sequence.
It's that choice is a valid one, so I won't push it too hard, but it just didn't have enough rock and roll, man.
I dig it. So I think it's obvious we all liked the movie, right? I'm gonna button this show up by saying this Top Gun Maverick is a better movie than Top Gun. Top Gun was groundbreaking at the time. It absolutely was. And a lot of the things in that movie were not topped, particularly as far as aerial photography, until today. Like, they're having real jets do real things in a way that we have never seen before on the big screen. Like, this is, I probably say this a lot, but this is absolutely one where you need to go to the biggest, loudest screen you can find. And you can feel this movie in a way that you often don't feel a lot of things. I did a recent episode about The Northman, that Viking movie came out a couple of months ago, and I said something similar, like you can feel the fire on the screen. Like this one, like you can feel the G-force, you can feel the rumble of the engines, and it's not just because it's loud, like it's edited and presented in a way that is like really visceral, and also like really believable.
Because it's authentic.
Yes, it is
authentic.
There's fewer than a dozen CGI shots of jets in this movie. The majority of it is all real jets performing real maneuvers. Plane to plane aerial photography. I don't know about like the surface to air missiles. I expect that was mostly CGI. They probably had they probably constructed a SAM site for the movie, so they had like a version of it on the ground that they could film from various angles. But I'm going to guess that those missiles were fake.
Right.
And in the original Top Gun, they were allowed to, or they could afford to fire one missile. I don't know if you guys know, in the original Top Gun, there's one authentic missile launch, and it was a missile that was a dud, right? It didn't have any explosives in it.
Right.
But they basically put 5 cameras on the outside of a jet, and it's the same missile launching every single time through the whole movie from different angles.
I know what scene you're talking about now.
Yeah. And I think they did a little bit more with that kind of thing in Top Gun Maverick, but no, it's like, it's a stunning movie. Like it hits all the emotional beats. They're all the ones you expect it to hit, especially with the, like Doug was saying, especially with the dynamic, with Goose's son. It kind of, it's really antagonistic until they have to work together. And then once they figure out to work together, it's really great. So like, I wouldn't say it's surprising, but I would say it's very well executed, which makes it all okay. And man, like I love this movie. Like this is probably the best movie I've seen all year, or at least it is the best time I have had in a movie theater all year. And that, I just mentioned The Northman. That's probably my second favorite of 2022. But like, damn, man, like I want to go see Top Gun Maverick again tomorrow, and I wish I didn't have to work all day. Like I am so hyped to see this movie again. It's so good. I want to thank both of you for coming on the show. Any closing thoughts? Did I already ask you that? Go ahead, Doug. You're going to say something.
Do you want to hear a sea story?
I would love to hear a sea story.
All right. The best one, I think, is the 95 workups is what we call them, workups. So essentially we go out to sea for 2 weeks before we go on a 6-month deployment.
Okay.
We practice drills. We, test things out, make sure everything's working right. We get people qualified, that kind of thing. Well, in February of 95, we were doing workups, and we were in a really very thick fog bank. And we come out of the fog bank right in the middle of the America's Cup race.
Okay.
So I don't want you to believe me. I want you to look it up for yourselves. Look up 95 America's Cup Abraham Lincoln and see the pictures for yourself. We were 200 yards from pretty well destroying everything there. The internationally televised America's Cup race. Yeah, we were right there. People
the Cup race goes to biggest U.S. Navy, February 5th, 1995.
Yes.
Can I show this?
Go ahead.
Keep talking, Doug.
Okay. So, that was a big deal. People got fired over that. And of course, being the smartasses that we made up t-shirts that said America's Cup 95, USS Abraham Lincoln, third in the race, first in its class. So yeah, we had fun with it, but it was of course, when we got in port, we grabbed the USA Today and we're looking at the pictures of it and like, yep, that's us. And do you have a picture of it, Brandon? Because we literally, an aircraft carrier we literally almost obliterated everything there. The fans,
wow.
the boats, everything. Your mic is off.
You're muted there, Brandon.
Brandon, you're muted.
Because I muted to push the mic out of the way. I'm not set up to show it on the show, but I will drop a link in the show notes.
Okay.
Yeah, I see one from the Washington Post. I see a thing on Pinterest. USS Abraham Lincoln crashing the America's Cup race in 1995.
Yeah.
Excellent.
That's
so
awesome.
I'll drop something in the description. I would really like to show this picture though.
I would have loved one of those shirts.
Oh yeah, we were a bunch of smartasses, so we had to do something for it. It was hilarious.
And on that note, I thank both of you guys for coming on the show. I just heard on the comms that Viper's in the air, so I'm gonna have to leave my wingmen hanging, and because I want Viper. So I'll see you guys later.
All right, thanks, Brandon.
Signing out.